concerns on point, this trend can be seen as a naivete of a generation, an ambivalence towards consumer capitalism, and a shift away from the Marxist traditions of critical theory. One can claim that in these works, like those produced for shell reflexive, the consumption of a pre-existing object by the artist and its use for the production of a new value is presented as a purely semiotic operation. Here, the ready-made's historic trajectory of traversing different economical and aesthetic networks is obscured. While embracing the language of the ready-made, these works are in fact projections of the ready-made as a mystifying force, and rather creating objects complicit in an ever-intensifying process of commodification. The shift away from socio-political critique emphasizes a generic consumer subjectivity that is merely a thin veneer glossing over capitalism's ability to create a false belief in objectivity. Yet in other ways, the work to be seen as harnessing this very ambivalence, creating doubt-filled gestures, equivocal objects, bemused paradoxes, and diffident proposals, possibly even wishful anticipation, by the sheer nature that they are in fact creating art objects and not mere commodities. In either case, these artists are attempting their own investigation into the question of what it is to exist within the conditions of contemporaneity. Sorry, it's hard to talk. So here are just some examples of those artists. And this is the philosopher they're all interested in. It's a copy of this book, gotten off of Tamarsa Quinn's Tumblr. Another trend in the digital world is to utilize digital means to alter the existing artistic gesture of painting. In general, there has been a trend towards trying to understand digital painting and the digital's relationship to painting. Nicholas O'Brien, a critic and curator based in Chicago, has worked on exhibitions on landscape and has a Tumblr, Notes on a New Nature, that's about a reiteration of the digital landscape. He curated a show on landscape at 319 Shoals, where he directly explores the relationship of internet and digital artists to the history of modernist painting. O'Brien claims that the way that we understand and navigate nature now is through technology. Artists in this exhibition are dealing with the problems artists face throughout time when they are attempting to represent landscape and nature in art. Additionally, Carrie Altman has a long-standing project called Garden Club on the relationship of digital art and technology to nature and biology. Here she's interested in the idea of the viral as being one that applies to biology and technology. These projects also expose an interest in abstraction and the relationship of the digital representations to the history of abstract art. Some artists are working both within a traditional art dialogue as well as within the world of the internet itself and the vast landscape of digital image proliferation in our networked world. Oliver Larrick, Alexandra Domanovic, Corey Archangel, John Nash, and Ned Fornelis are prime examples of this practice. They all work with the digital age as a backdrop, but are expanding their scope in interesting ways that dialogue with the history of art, its own avant-garde ruptures, and our language of visual culture. They expand beyond the walls of the gallery into the digital world. They create objects, but they also have projects that can be seen as indistinguishable from internet activities or actions. By existing across media, these works are antithetical to dominant beliefs in both modernist and postmodernist art theory that often closes off art's relationship to the everyday. The works of these artists instead fight against the inaccessibility or closed network of the art world, utilizing the social space of the internet to create a new type of art language, one that resists modernist sensibility of Greenberg or Fried. As well as, through its proliferation and its openness, it resists a destabilization and rupture common to the ideas of the historical avant-garde. Instead, they embody an openness to the specificity of the external world through mass image and content proliferation that is now allowed for by the internet. Larrick's work, such as 787 clip arts, spread through his website all over the world, creating everyday experiences for the viewer who clicked on the page through their internet habits rather than through their art viewing habits. Larrick's work often addresses image production and the unfixed or malleable nature of the digital image itself. Yet Larrick is also interested in the history of the image in art. In works such as Copian Critique at the Sculpture Hall in Basel in 2011, Larrick took not only the idea of the copy of the history of the copy and the appropriation as an artistic critique from its earliest iterations, its historical origin in ancient Roman copies of Greek sculptures. His work is dealing with the concept of iconoclasm throughout history, and also addresses the art historical importance of images alongside and inseparable from our everyday encounter with images. Alexandra Domanovic's works are very much invested in history and a reconsideration of normative modernist histories, both in terms of an understanding of the collapse of the Eastern Bloc, which existed very much outside of what we think of as traditional modernist art historical teleologies, but also with the parallel rise of internet and communication technologies in the shadow of the collapse of the wall in the 1990s. She's interested in the shifts of meaning of images over time through circulation and consumption, looking at major political and cultural shifts, primarily for homeland Yugoslavia. Images and the idea of art in the former Eastern Bloc had a very different social function than in the Western context, and Domanovic's work explores the relationship of past and present image culture in a way that exposes and explores the breakdown of a merely Western art critical language and expose the nuanced national and cultural politics of place and memory. Another interesting iteration of art utilizing the dialogical space of the internet is the New York-based collective K-Hole. K-Hole creates what has become known in the marketing world as trend forecasts. They create these trend forecasts uncommissioned by any company or product. They exist somewhere between cultural criticism and ambivalent statement. Their forecasts exist online as a free PDF and as a limited edition print. They revolve around a central marketing theme, usually concerning a neologism or various forms of corporate jargon. These reports walk a thin line between parody and commercially savvy acceptance. K-Hole manages to engage in a reading of their own ambivalence as post-industrial consumers. Finally, the network of the internet also allows for there to be an alternative space for dialogue amongst these artists, curators, and critics. It allows for a vast heterogeneous community. For Tumblr, Facebook, Twitter, etc., artists working within various mediums create not only gallery-ready art objects, but also artistic micro-communities. They can have individual works, as well as works that exist in the space of the internet. Art objects become only part of the practice. Artistic actions become performed in this virtual realm at the same time as they enter into normal, everyday worlds of the world of images. These artists in no way merely create objects that sit in the art world. They extend in ways that sometimes the viewers don't even know that they're looking at an object instead of just another YouTube video. The blurring of these lines is one of the things that's so interesting about the work that exists in the digital realm, of this relationship to the art world and to the everything else. I'm going to end with a quote from Sven Ludekin from his essay on thing theory and object-oriented ontology, and hopefully lead into a dialogue where he says, quote, "A properly reflexive work of art can never be only about its status as art, or about art itself. Since art's apparent autonomy is socially conditioned, the obverse of its heteronymous inscription in a global capitalist economy, the work of art's self-reflection is a sham, if it is not potentially about everything and everything."
Thank you for the talk. It was incredibly rich with sort of different directions that I think aren't exactly introduced enough into dialogue about this work. And I think placing it in a historical context is, funnily enough, quite unusual. You find that, I find it at any rate, that a lot of the dialogue, around this these artists or this art, indeed, the one thing that makes it seem like a moment or a movement is just that they're all talking to each other. However, all the talk that's happening is spoken in a very present moment, or in a way that kind of foregrounds the fact that it's happening now. So if you think of surf clubs and kind of exchanging images, it's all about what's happening next. There's never really this kind of retrospective statement or kind of summary of exactly how let's say, everyone fits into a historical trajectory. And so I think it's been quite interesting to see you kind of convey some of those lines. I wonder if people agree that that's been useful, or if you think there's a different historical kind of way into this kind of dialogue.
Shall we move ourselves forward, and then we can kind of like open it up?
All right.
I think in regards to what you're saying, first of all, I think we're at this. Like, first of all, thank you, man. That was spectacular. That was great. There's a very strange way that we're looking at history right now, particularly with this. I think kind of backwards perspective that everything that's come before, particularly in regards to technology,